Here's how I paint my Blanchitsu groundskeepers. A Blanchitsu model basically boils down to a heavily weathered or grim dark mini, and luckily for all of us, it doesn't have to be that difficult. I'm a big fan of low effort, high reward, and I feel like I've struck a good method. If you didn't see my last video, I recommend watching it to see how we got to this point. That step is essential to complete before you do this.
Let's get to it.
First, zenithal prime your mini. A zenithal prime is where you prime a mini with black and then spray from above with a lighter color to simulate natural highlights. This helps pop out details for painting and provides a great base for glazes and washes. I primed and highlighted with an airbrush, but you can use a rattle can or just a brush. Start basing all of the cloth, leather, and the shield. I got a little saucy with the markings on his robes and made a checker pattern with flat blue and white. I didn't get the squares correct right away, but I kept going back and cleaning up the lines until I was happy with it. Then I covered the rest of the robes with white. Since this is supposed to be grimy, don't worry about getting perfect coverage. If the zenithal highlight shows through underneath, that's even better. If you can, glazing is great here. I like giving extra attention to things like shields. They can look pretty boring as large, flat areas with little detail. I painted one half with flat brown and the other with white. Then I took my wood color and created little chips in the white side to weather the white paint. I also took my base wood color, added some model color buff, and, using a sharp brush, painted on some vertical lines to act as wood grain. Next, cover the entire mini, base and all, in a thick wash. I used Agrax Earthshade here, assuming most people are familiar with them, but this style is perfect for oil washes too. You can get pretty much the exact same effect with either a normal wash or oil washes. Use a brush to soak up any areas where the wash might be pooling too much, but honestly, since you're trying to be grimy, don't worry too much. If you like this look, this would be a great place to stop. You can work this way through a whole squad with relative ease and have cool looking minis with tons of detail. However, if you want to take it to the next level, next, I'm going to highlight all of the cloth. The main idea is to work your way up from the base color to a lighter color and avoid the recesses. I try to stipple, which is an artsy way to say stab, as I highlight. This creates visual texture. For the white cloth, I work my way up from Rakarth Flesh and mix in buff until I'm highlighting with pure buff. For the blue, I use flat blue and added white. Next, add silver and bronze to the mini. Again, don't worry too much about coverage, it's supposed to look grimy. For the gun, I also mix some black into the metallic paint to add some variety. After that, add some battle damage to the shield. I mixed some black into the flat brown I used as the base, and, with a nice brush, created thin lines going across the shield. Then, on the wooden side of the shield, I took the wood grain color I used earlier and painted thin lines directly under the dark lines I just made. I did the same with the white on the painted half. I also dotted around with white where I made the chips earlier too. Take some white and brighten some areas that aren't damaged to boost contrast on the painted side. Then comes my favorite part, weathering. Take some Typhus Corrosion and apply it to wherever you put on texture paste to look like heavy rust. Quickly clean your brush and feather the edges to make smoother transitions. Don't worry about the Typhus Corrosion getting on the shield. It just looks like dirt, which in this case is good. Apply Typhus Corrosion to the cloth as well. I used my finger to wipe away excess and help smooth transitions. Focus on applying it to areas that would naturally be dirty, like the bottom of his robes. Once that dries, dry brush, or in my case, scrape some Ryza Rust onto the worn places. If you want, you can create a sort of rust wash by taking a wet brush to the freshly applied Ryza Rust. Now, take some real wash and go over all the Typhus Corrosion and Ryza Rust you just applied. Also apply some wash on areas that need to be dirtied further, like on the bottom of the robes and on the shield. Finally, to finish the weathering, take a turquoise paint and get it into the recesses of the copper and bronze areas you just painted. So to do something while you wait for all that to dry, apply a second all-over wash to the base with Agrax or an oil wash. I also used some Nuln oil and put it on the lowest part of the ground to create a little contrast. Once the base dries, dry brush it with a lighter color, like buff. I painted the sword azure and highlighted with white, making sure to have a bright white edge highlight. Highlight the armor with a bright silver as well. I found that stippling, stabbing, as well as edge highlighting creates a decently realistic highlight for metals. A big part of Blanchitsu paint jobs is the object source lighting. I used azure in my airbrush and carefully sprayed directly towards the mini, using the sword as a source. Alternatively, and probably more accurately, you can use glazes and build up layers via brush. I recommend keeping a little card nearby to test how watered down it is. You want the paint to be thin enough to show a lot of what's underneath, but almost act like a filter. I went back in with some thinned base colors to lessen the intensity of the OSL. For example, I thought the checker pattern on his robe was getting lost, so I went in with some blue and buff and brought them back. A big step that is often missed at the end is blacklining. Blacklining is taking a wash like Nuln oil and going around the areas on the mini that need to be darkened, such as the barrel of his pistol, the eye holes, and the edges that might not be as well defined as you want. Finally, paint the base rim black and you're done. This is a pretty brainless, quick, and carefree technique that I think gives great results. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave them in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Alright, bye-bye.